Welcome back to The Price of Business. I'm your host, Kevin Price, talking to you about you and your business. You know, we're doing an ongoing feature which is getting great reviews. People I talk to are loving it as we bring in talented people from around the country to write articles, to provide content, to do interviews like these with Frank Granett, who's with an organization, CAOOY.org. His organization and The Price of Business have partnered together, creating The Price of ADHD Business, an ongoing series about how profits are coming before the health of individuals in many cases, and we're trying to combat that through better media and better information. And today, as always, Frank, welcome to the program. Tell us a little bit about your organization, and then introduce our guest for today's segment.
Yeah, great to be here, Kevin, with you and our guest. CAOOY is just a phenomenal organization. Now, we're getting response from all over the country to help strengthen business as well as families going forward with behavioral problems such as ADHD, but we're also talking about anxiety, depression, and all these other types of conditions that have a root cause analysis. So our objective through our nonprofit is to help those families and businesses understand what those risk factors are. And today, Kevin, we got a great guest with us. He has over 20 years experience in nutritional medicine, and he's a former World Health Organization consultant. And he comes to us today. His name is Stuart Tomc. And Stuart, great to have you on our program today.
You're doing great work, Frank, and thank you very much for having me, Kevin. It's a sobering topic, but I think I have something to offer.
Awesome.
Yeah, you know what? I looked at the stat that was out there from the WHO, the World Health Organization. They're talking about, you know, depressive type illnesses or disorders are now the fourth leading cause of disease and disability. And now what they're stating is that it's going to be ranking number second in the year 2020. So what are the factors that, as far as you can see, Stuart, that you've been in through your experience that are contributing to this onset of depressive illness?
Well, clearly, when you separate the socioeconomic challenges that we're facing, and then the fact that the World Economic Forum, you might have caught this, put out their top trends for 2014, and for the first time ever, they included rapid spread of misinformation online in the same list as political instability in the Middle East and North Africa.
Mm-hmm.
So what I have to now do is adjust all of my statements and lectures to make sure that I'm going to reference exactly where I'm gleaning this information from. So I will encourage all of you to follow Captain Dr. Joseph Hibbeln, Hibben, Hibbeln. You can go to pubmed.gov, pubmed.gov, U.S. National Library of Medicine, National Institutes of Health. Now, Captain Hibbeln is a hero of mine. He's not only a captain in the Army, he's a psychiatrist, and he's one of the leading uniformed health officials in the area of dietary fat intake and mental health.
I hope to God that he doesn't have a Twitter account, because with a name like that, his entire account would be summarized in just his name. I didn't want to send him a message. It'd be impossible to send that guy a message. It'd be like 3 letters. It'd be a bad word game. Let me ask you, though. So it's interesting. What I find interesting is how people are really, this huge exaggeration in people's mind about what their circumstances are, comparing them to catastrophic circumstances. There's got to be a lot of factors that are going on that contribute to that. Talk a little bit about that.
Okay, so to set the stage here, if you indulge me, I just want to read about 3 sentences from one of his papers, okay, and this will set our conversation. Captain Dr. Hibbeln, NIH, says the field of omega-3 fatty acid deficiencies. So this is where we're not eating fish like we should. We all know that, correct? The field of omega-3 fatty acid deficiencies as reversible risk factors, Frank, in major psychiatric disorders has flourished in the last decade. Treatment recommendations from the American Psychiatric Association, meaning take omega-3 when you're taking Prozac, may be considered for application to more normative states of psychiatric health, those of us not yet diagnosed but totally stressed out. He says, consider here the proposition that an increased risk of personality disorders and an increased sense of despair, in normative populations might be considered as symptoms of deficiencies of omega-3 fatty acids. Now, here's the crux. The major change in the essential fatty acid composition in the food supply, including increased availability of seed oils, soybean, safflower, sunflower, cottonseed oil, rich in omega-6, listen, may be correlated not only with increased risk of homicide, but also increased risk of suicide and suboptimal social cohesion. I would say we live with suboptimal social cohesion. We have an increased risk of personality disorders, increased risk of sense of despair, and he calls eating more fish and more omega-3 a reversible risk factor in major psychiatric disorders. That's a lot.
Wow.
Well, Stuart, the takeaway for our listeners is this. The fact is omega-3s are not just for cardiovascular disease. And the fact is, and you can agree with me on this, Stuart, is the fact that the brain tissue is 60+%, just over 60% lipid and protein material. But here's the fact. 8 to 10% of that has to be of these essential fatty acids, omega-3s, for cognitive functioning, for executive functioning, etc. So what we have to understand is that omega-3s, you have to make sure you got great supplementation, because even in our food supply, Stuart, the fish content, is full of toxins. So unless you understand or are aware that the food supply is pure, what I recommend usually, and I'm sure you do, Stuart, what do you feel about a good, pure source of omega-3 supplementation every day? And this is for kids as well as adults in the workplace. What do you think about that?
I agree. I just want to add one caveat to that.
Sure.
Dariush Mozaffarian at Harvard, again, I'm just a compulsive academic, but Dariush Mozaffarian at Harvard published a paper on the risk-reward benefit of farm-raised versus wild salmon. And to my chagrin, he found out that there was not a statistically significant increase of cancer risk, a lifetime, we're talking 70-year consumption of farm-raised salmon versus wild salmon. Now, that being said, the wild salmon has more omega-3 because it's eating lower levels of grain because it's not being fed as much soy meal. But I need to make that clear because for years I would say a farm-raised fish is no better than a donut. Well, that's a gross oversimplification. And for people that are on a budget, which I am on, eating a can of sardines every day is the equivalent of taking about 4 or 5 capsules of omega-3 fish oil. So if you ate a can of sardines and an apple for breakfast for $2.20, you could really, really get probably the most nutrient-dense, brain-protective meal, and you could get it prepared in less than 10 seconds.
Sardines and what?
An apple.
An apple, okay. And probably a green apple would be even better for you because it's got less sugar. There you go. All right, Stuart Tomc and Frank Granett, great segments today, gentlemen. Appreciate it very much. Frank, by the way, when are you going to have another article over at usdailyreview.com?
Yeah, look, I'd like our listeners to understand the next article will be on site or available within the next 7 days, and we're going to talk about how do you get a corporation to realize the importance of a health and wellness program, because every $1, Kevin, that we invest, like a corporation would invest in a health and wellness program for their employees, there's a fivefold or $5 increase in cost savings to that company or corporation. So it's very important to get into these risk factors and understand what the cause is before we go to drug therapy. Can I just jump in
really quickly? I want to send you some information on healthcare cost reduction and omega-3 that one of my mentors has been doing.
Okay. Very good.
I'll send it over.
Thank you very much, and we'll mention that on the radio as well.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.
You bet. NordicNaturals.com. That's Stuart's company. And then Frank, you can learn more about him at CAOOY.org. Thanks to both of you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Kevin.
All right. When we come back, we're going to have much more for you. Do want to remind you, best content here does show up over there at USDailyReview.com. And you're listening to The Price of Business.